All right, I would like to call our hearing on the Municipal Building Authority to order, and we will have Dean Story announce this item.
Thank you, Mayor. On our agenda tonight for the 6:30 meeting, we have scheduled a Municipal Building Authority hearing. And the purpose of the hearing is to consider the issuance of bonds for the construction and renovation and expansion of City Hall. As you know, we've been working on this project for quite some time, and this is one of our next steps, is to hold the hearing. And then after the hearing, our next step would be actually to solicit bids from investors on those bonds, and then determine the parameters of those bonds, the interest costs, the issuance costs, and other things. And that will take place sometime towards the end of August, according to our schedule. So again, the purpose of the hearing is to take any comments from the public to address the issuance of bonds. And another provision of that hearing is if there's any competition with the private sector. That's always an issue from the IRS when you're issuing tax-exempt bonds, is how are you competing with the private sector? And I don't know too many people willing to step in and build a city hall for us. So, but that's still an issue. Thank you.
Very good. All right. Just getting the sign-up sheet. No one signed up. We do not have anybody signed up to speak to this. Did you realize there was a sign-up sheet? Would you like to speak to this item? Okay. Just want to make sure. Uh-huh. Okay.
It's exciting, let me tell you.
Okay. Okay. Very good. All right. Okay. All right. I do not have anybody signed up to speak to this item. I would entertain. Well, should we keep it open for a couple more minutes? What do you think? Let's wait for a couple more minutes. Somebody might be running a little bit late. I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, we'll adjourn for about 10 minutes till the next hearing.
looked it over a little bit. Yeah, still some questions, but thanks.
And I'm not sure if somebody from the county is going to be here, so,
Cool.
okay.
It didn't really spell out like where the Kaysville boundary was. Maybe I didn't see it, but hopefully somebody will be here to explain that.
Yeah, maybe we could ask Lyle to pull it up, and we could look on it on the GIS.
So that's like an extension.
Cool. Right on.
On Spark to just
I would like to call the redevelopment agency budget hearing to order. And Dean Story, will you please give us the briefing?
Thank you, Mayor. We have a series of hearings tonight related to the fiscal year 2020 budget. The first one is the redevelopment agency, and then that will follow with the building authority and the hearing on enterprise fund transfers, and then the regular budget hearing. Just maybe so you know the schedule, tonight is the night for public hearings, and then after public hearings, after we take comment tonight, there will be no action on the budgets. We'll take comments, and then we've scheduled for June 20th at our next meeting to adopt the modified tentative budget, adopt the consolidated fee schedule, and adopt the compensation plan. And then in addition to that, on August 15th, we plan on holding a truth and taxation hearing. And at that evening, we will adopt the certified tax rate and adopt the final budget. So that's kind of the schedule we're working with. The first hearing is the redevelopment agency budget, and there are two items for hearing. The first item is amendment to the redevelopment agency current budget, and I've given you a handout, but maybe you can see it on here as well. It's not very clear. During the year, we sold a parcel, sold a piece of property, and that property was 300 West and Main Street. Go up a little bit. Yeah. One more, a little more. Yeah. Anyway, you see that the property sale, $195,000. So our suggestion is you amend the budget to take that property sale into account. And then related with that property sale, there are expenditures. There are expenditures related to fees, and also on that particular piece, there was a plat change. We purchased the property at several years ago for the purpose of gaining right-of-way, and so we sold that piece. We didn't sell the full piece that we purchased. We kept that right-of-way, and so there are some accounting adjustments there. So that's the first item for hearing is the amendment. The second item for hearing for the redevelopment agency is the current year 2020 budget in your workbooks.
Okay. All right. Just a minute. Okay. Do we have anybody signed up for any of them? Nope. Okay. All right. Just as a point of clarification for us, Nick, so each of these hearings, do we need to open and close each individual one?
Yeah, you do.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay.
It's because you sit as different bodies.
Absolutely.
So, yep, everyone
Right.
needs to be
Okay.
open.
We will wait for a couple minutes and close and open the next one.
Are we going to discuss any of this on our end?
Not tonight, no, next week. Or, sorry, next council meeting.
No questions?
Not tonight. Now is the time for our public to comment, not us. Okay, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
And a second?
Yes.
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember DeCare, seconded by Councilmember Adams. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. I'd like to call the Municipal Building Authority Board to order and to open our Municipal Building Authority budget hearing.
This hearing is like the redevelopment agency. It's a separate entity, and it really is a building authority, not building authority, or however I spelled that. It's building authority.
Authority.
Rowity.
Again, there are two items there: the amendment to the building authority and review of the current budget. We don't anticipate any amendments on the building authority. And as you recall, the building authority is an entity that's created for the construction of public improvements. We've used the building authority in the past for the construction of public buildings. And the budget that is itemized here is for the annual payments for the obligation for the police station for the building authority.
Thank you. And we don't have anybody who signed up for this, but we'll wait. Somebody might wander in. Want to give them full opportunity. going to be the most boring YouTube to watch. I will entertain a motion to close the Municipal Building Authority budget hearing.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember DeCare and seconded by Councilmember Barber. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. One more minute. Okay, I would like to call the Kaysville City Council budget hearing for fiscal year 2020 Enterprise Funds Inter-Fund Services and Transfers hearing to order. And Dean?
This hearing is related to a fairly new requirement within the last couple of years. The legislature passed some legislation that says anytime there is interfund activity between enterprise funds and the general fund, which is a pretty common practice, accounting practice, they require a separate public hearing to address that. And in addition to that, a mailer is sent to the residents of Kaysville, and that's been done. So the purpose is to deal with any issues related to interfund activity. Just so you know, there are two types of interfund activity. There's what we call the reciprocal transfers, and that means if an enterprise fund provides services, or if the general fund, maybe the other way around, if the general fund provides services to the enterprise fund pays for those services at value. For example, billing services, fleet maintenance, IT services, and cash is actually exchanged. That's a reciprocal transfer. So money coming into the general fund from the enterprise fund. The other type of transfer is what's called a non-reciprocal transfer, and that is if an enterprise fund provides service to the general fund or to governmental funds of the city, value is given, but cash is not exchanged. And an example of that would be the Water Enterprise Fund providing water service to city buildings and city parks at no charge, no cash charge. There's a value assigned on our financial statements, but cash is not exchanged. So that's the type of interfund activity.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, and we did not have anybody signed up to speak to this item, so we'll wait for a few minutes. I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All right. It's been moved by Councilmember Adams and seconded by Councilmember Barber. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I would like to call the Kaysville City Council budget hearing for fiscal year 2020 to order. And Dean.
The final hearing tonight is the fiscal year 2020 budget. We've had our budget, our tentative budget, for a number of weeks, been working on that. It's been made available to the public on our website. We also have had copies in the office for people to review. Within the general budget, there are two items for the hearing. There's amendments to the current year, fiscal year 19 budget, and then just consideration of the tentative budget. We do have some amendments for fiscal year 19. Within the budget, there are two governmental funds. There's the debt service fund, and we don't anticipate any amendments there. And then there is the capital projects fund, and we do have some amendments listed there. The first one, we'll look at the expenditures first. We're requesting that we amend the capital projects fund budget for the fiber feasibility study, which the council approved several months ago. And our purpose is to account for it in the capital projects fund. And then if that project is funded and successful, we will recapture those costs as part of the funding. Another amendment would include rail trail improvements. During the year, we've made several improvements to the rail trail. That includes some lighting projects at crossings. It also includes the extension across the ponds area for the rail trail. And then another amendment would be public works projects that are impact fee eligible. So if a project is impact fee eligible, it's accounted for in the capital projects fund. And we've done some preliminary work for some of those projects, including Angel, Sunset, and some other areas. So we'd request an amendment there of $75,000. And this funding does come from impact fee monies. And then the last one is Pioneer Park. We accelerated that project, just had a grand opening. So we recommend that we amend that budget to account for those expenditures. And again, those are all impact fee eligible projects, so it doesn't affect the general fund. And then the fiscal year 2020 budget also includes the primary fund of the city, the general fund. And we don't anticipate any amendments current year, 2019. Looks like everything's in line or quite a bit below what we, as far as expenditures, what we projected. So those are the issues for the hearing tonight.
Okay, thank you. All right, and we didn't have anybody signed up for this. Many times during the year, we'll have folks who have concerns about the budget. Anytime throughout the year, if you have concerns about the budget or have questions, you can always contact myself, a council member, or Dean Story, and be glad to look into it or explain why decisions were made or how it's accounted for. So this isn't your only opportunity to weigh in on that. But nobody is here. I would entertain a motion to close this hearing.
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilmember Larry Page and seconded by
I'll second.
Michelle Barber, who comes through in the clutch once again. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, okay. Now, I would like to open the Kaysville City Council meeting for June 6, 2019, and we will have our opening provided by Councilmember Dave Adams.
We're fortunate enough to have the Youth City Council here tonight, and Emily Alvord has been kind enough to offer our invocation for us tonight. Emily, if you don't mind, if you just want to stand up to the mic.
Heavenly Father, we're grateful to be gathered as council members and as city residents. We're so grateful to have council members working for our good. We're grateful for this rain that we've been blessed with. We're grateful to live in this area, in this country, grateful for our freedoms and for those who are fighting for our freedoms, for those who have given their lives and who are currently serving locally and throughout the country. Please bless that we can look for ways to benefit and serve our community, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Emily, for brightening up the room. And if the audience wouldn't mind, if we could all rise and follow in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. The first thing on the agenda this evening is recognition of our Youth City Council, and I'm going to turn the time over to Councilmember Barber.
Thank you. Excellent opening by our mayor, Emily Alvord. So thank you so much for that. We are going to be recognizing our Youth City Council, our seniors who are graduating. So for those who don't know, we have youth in this city, high school aged youth, that come and participate and learn some really great leadership skills and serve the community. And then when they graduate, we have to bid them farewell. And so we don't have all of them here tonight, but I'm going to recognize the ones that are graduating with their names, and then I'll have Emily come up and we can present plaques to those that are here. But I also wanted to highlight some of the things that they've done over their service. We've worked with our schools in the city and worked with public safety and outreach within the school. They've learned a lot about public works and sharing that information throughout the city. Volunteered at every community event that we've had. They've been there. They did a lot of work for Kaysville Gives and donating to people in need within our community. That was fantastic. And also with Veterans Day and serving our veterans here locally. And much more than that, I'm sure. And also our legislative day at the Capitol, I'm sure will go down in as a good memory for them and learning how government locally and at a state level works. So thank you all for your service. We're going to be recognizing, we had Allie Jarman, she served with our council for 1 year, Tom Mee for 1 year, Anna Van Noy 1 year, Jeremy Whitaker was here with us for 1 year, Kyla Essex for 2 years, Mitchell Harding for 2 years, and our mayor, Emily Alvord. Total service was over 5 years. So thank you for that. First one out of the gate. So to our mayor, Emily Alvord, thank you for your service. Anna Van Noy. We will get that.
We'll turn them over to you to give to the other council members. So we appreciate your service. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mayor, did you want a picture?
You know, I want a picture and I want Allie up here too. Where's Allie? Is there another council member here? Come on up, Allie. Come on up. Pretty sure. Yeah.
Take a plaque.
Take your plaque. Yep. Gotta do this. Right? You have to stand in descending order. Oh, no.
Okay, we go 1, 2, 3. You take one. One.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor.
Get one for Dad. Did you get one for Dad?
We appreciate our Youth City Council so much. It's a very robust group of kids, and they do a lot, as Councilmember Barber indicated. They are out and about in our community and learning how to serve, and it's just one of our youth efforts. There's also the youth court that spends hours and hours serving our city as well. So we appreciate the youth, and we appreciate the leaders who work with our youth. Thank you so much for your dedication to this.
Thank you.
All right. Now we'll move on. Any declarations of conflicts of interest from
No.
council tonight? Yes.
I wanted to state that one of the items directly affects me in my neighborhood, and it's also represented by a member of my family is represented. Later.
So you do not need to recuse yourself, but just
wanted to
letting everybody know that which item number is it?
It is 5C.
5C.
Sorry, 5C.
Thank you. All right. Okay, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Would somebody like to move our consent agenda?
I'll make a motion that we move consent items 4A through F.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember DeCare, seconded by Councilmember Garn. Let's start with Councilmember Adams.
I make a substitute motion that we talk about item E.
You'd like to remove E?
Yep.
Okay. So you would like to offer a substitute motion to move the
To
consent?
remove item E from the consent agenda.
How about this? Why don't you make a motion to pass the consent agenda minus E?
Sure. I'll make a motion that we pass the consent items minus E.
I'll second.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Adams.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
Aye.
Nay.
Okay, that motion fails. All right, we'll entertain another motion.
I think it reverts back to.
Oh, it goes to the original. All right, so we'll go to Councilmember Page, original motion.
Okay. Aye.
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 Nay.
Okay, motion passes 4-1. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to our action items. First is a request to rezone 0.9 acre of property at 370 South Angel Street from RA Residential Agricultural to R120 Single Family Residential Zoning District. Lyle?
And Mayor, we'd be looking for two distinct motions, but I may entertain that we introduce also the following item at the same time as they're
Please,
regarding
if you could
the same property, at
both.
least as far as introduction. Take my mouse. With the council's permission, I'll go to my seat so that I can go through the slides.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. So the item here in discussion this evening is related to this property at 370 South Angel Street. First is in regard to a rezone request for the property. Currently, as you can see, the property is located just on the corner of Galbraith Street and Angel. There's one home currently on the property which fronts and gains access off of Angel Street. It's within the bright green RA zoning district currently. And the RA zoning district requires a true half acre on each lot that is subdivided within that designation. And the property owner, in hopes of subdividing the property in order to create a second lot on the west half of the property that would be accessed off of Galbraith, has requested a rezone. They're close to a full acre, which could be subdivided in the RA district. But at 0.98 acres, they are just shy of that. And so the R120 allows for similar development, requiring lots that are slightly smaller, just 20,000 square feet apiece, which would accommodate the desired subdivision. So the Planning Commission has held a public hearing on the item, and regarding the rezone, unanimously recommended approval of the R120 zoning district. Also, regarding the preliminary plat, the Planning Commission again at their meeting earlier in May, considered the item and recommended approval of the preliminary plat for the proposal. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take those at this time.
Okay. On either the rezone or the plat, right? Okay, so we'll discuss both together. First, we're going to open a public hearing. Do we have anybody signed up to speak to this? All right, thank you. Or either one? Neither one, okay. So we'll go to council questions. Questions from council on either? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion on the rezone.
I'll move to grant approval of rezone the .98 acre property at 370 South Angel Street from RA to R120 for Catherine L. Webster.
Second the motion.
It's been moved by Councilmember DeCare, seconded by Councilmember Adams. Any comments at this time? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. Councilmember Garn?
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. I will now entertain a motion for the preliminary plat.
I'll move that we approve preliminary plat of aforementioned property,
I'll
370
second.
South Angel
Okay.
Street.
It's been moved by Councilmember DeCare, seconded by Councilmember Page. Any comments? Seeing none, we'll go to vote. Councilmember Barber.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Okay, we're moving on to request to rezone 5.74 acres of property at 1955 West, 200 North from A5 heavy agriculture to RA residential agriculture to the R18 single-family residential zoning district to include the PRUD overlay zone. Brad Frost, Capital Reef Management. Lyle.
Thank you, Mayor. So by way of introduction to this item, I'll give some details on it regarding the request. I do know the applicants here this evening with some information they were hoping to share with the council, and then I suspect there's likely some comment from the public as well on this. So we'll be happy to entertain questions from the council at any time throughout that, depending on the information that arises. The property that you can see here on the map on the screen and in your packet, just near the far west end of Angel Street, or excuse me, of 200 North, just east of Angel Street. On the south side, there's an existing home that is along 200 North Street. Essentially, the property in bulk is this rectangular piece that's owned by one owner, and the other property owner that's consented to the application is in the home on the frontage. Right now, the property is surrounded. There's some existing agricultural property to the east, the dark green A5, which is the majority of the property in question's existing zoning. To the north, you have R120 zoning district, and surrounding it, a smattering of A1, which is, I'm not very good at explaining colors, but I'll call it a camo green, and an RA that is a bright green. The A1 is an acre-sized agricultural use. The RA are your half-acre residential agricultural lots. The applicants requested, for the purpose of developing the property, the R18 zoning district to accommodate this concept use, and the PRUD overlay zone as a component of that, which would allow for some variation in lot sizes. It also gives the council the ability, should they feel appropriate and desire the type of development, to give some variation not only in lot sizes but setback items can be included as well. It's considered a common open space subdivision the way that it's shown, with some common areas up against 200 North Street and on the west end of the cul-de-sac. The item before you is a rezone request, so we've not gone through the subdivision process, but you do have here before you for consideration of either the outright zone or anyway the desire of the developer, that if you felt that this was a desirable type of development, could be assured through a development agreement later on in the process. Based on this concept proposal, it shows access coming off of 1700 West Street, which is the street to the south and the east of it, that would continue and push through ultimately to 200 North, providing through access into the neighborhood to the south. lining up with Wilkie Street across 200 North to the north. And then the remaining homes would be off of a proposed cul-de-sac, which would be built within the development. Ultimately, again, it's a legislative action that you're looking at with a rezone request. The Planning Commission has held a public hearing on the item, and after doing so, has recommended unanimously a recommendation of approval of the requested rezone. The City Council, in consideration to that, the general plan, the specific location, can do what you will with it to either approve, table, deny, or ask for additional details on the request. And again, I believe the applicant's got additional information on it that I'll try not to duplicate too much, cut my comments short now, but again, be happy to provide information or take questions throughout the item as requested by the council.
Would the applicant like to speak now or wait till after the public hearing? Now, please. Come on forward.
Let's see if you'll go to number 4. Yep, there you go. My name's Brad Frost, Ovation Homes, and happy to be here again. We were just here a few months ago, so we're very excited about this property. We've worked on it for several months to try and get a synopsis that would work with the city and the neighbors, and had several discussions in different situations. And so I want to kind of give you a brief explanation of how we got here. We had looked at different analyzations as far as how to bring the road in and what would work for the city and for the residents. Talked to several residents as far as the concern of traffic, which seems to be the biggest thing. There's been a concern of water that's gone on the property, and we've done extensive research from the Planning Commission as we listened to everyone there, went back and just gathered some more information. So this is what this slide presentation is, hopefully will be helpful and give some ideas and thoughts of what we can do to meet the demands of both sides of the city and the citizens. So on this particular one, this is our latest and greatest. We do have one change. We were switching the detention basin, which will be presented in the next meeting, on the south side, and providing the open space on the south side next to Mr. Burton's property. But this is 5.74 acres, 22 lots. It's 3.83 units per acre. That's a lot lower than what you can get on an R18 PRUD. I believe it's 5.8 on a PRUD R18. The reason we did that is just because of side yards and the site-specific square footage that our clients desire. The 3.83 is below even an R110 PRUD, so we're really fitting within that zone. But the side and front and rear setbacks just meet better for us to have it in that R18. With that being the case, we're willing to go into a development agreement with the city to make sure that the use as active adult community for 55 and older will be just that, and to make sure that the density does not go above what we have presented. One of the other concerns was on-site stormwater detention. We have a large space there. Our open spaces are right along 200 North. We've got about 300 feet off of 200 North, which allows the council to consider some higher density along busier streets. And that's one of the reasons why we proposed this. One of the concerns was there was water running through this property continually for a long, long time. Some of it was stormwater from previous subdivisions to the north. Some of it was tailwater from irrigation. After 200 North was put in, the stormwater was, there was a gate there that was open, and it would come through. That was closed off. And so the water that goes through there is just tailwater. What we've proposed, and we've worked with Mr. Anderson to the north, or to the east, is on the parcel we'll have a collector box there, and that water will go through the storm sewer, through the cul-de-sac, and then go through its normal channel after that. So there won't be any loss of water. It'll continue and just be like it has been in the past. If you'd go to 2 more slides. Right here. So here's some of the suggestions that we heard. We had heard a speed table, which is different than a speed bump. Here's kind of a dimensions, an example of what that would look like. I believe I think I passed a. Oh, go back one, will you, Lyle? There. This was based on the input. This is what we were suggesting as potential scenarios that would meet demands for both city and the citizens. So a possible island pinpoint, similar to what you'd see in Mountain Vistas just up the street, where it looks more like a private drive than it does a public drive. A possible speed table about halfway through, and then stop signs on 75 South and 1700 West were the suggestions that we heard. The next one, just an example of the speed table. The one thing I will say is that the active adult, if you were to put this as half-acre lots, you would have the numbers. You'd have 11 trips per day, and with the active adult, it's 3.71. So there's a considerable difference, even if they were half-acre lots, of the traffic that goes through there. So that's a benefit to the to the citizens and the city in that area. Speed table, it raises about 3 to 4 inches. It's about 22 feet long. It has an 8-foot flat top, and definitely think that would help. The next one, just another example of a median island diverter. They are called a lot of different things, but it'll decrease speed of traffic entering the roadway and slow things down. And I think more than anything, the appearance that it brings. The last part, we've gone over this last time. Still such a huge need. Just to give you an idea, Orchard Ridge, we are still working on getting that completed, but we opened it up 2 weeks ago, and we had 26 lots in the first phase, and we'll have 20 under reservation. Expect to sell out the first phase in the next 2 weeks. There's a huge demand for the product, and some people don't want to live on the east side. Some people want to live on the west side, and currently there's only one project out there. We have a huge amount of interest, and it's needed in the city, and so I'll leave it at that and be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks,
I would
Brad.
like to now open the public hearing on this. Just so you know, I am very strict about the 3-minute limit. We like to be fair, and no giving away your time to somebody else. That's not fair either. All right. So here we go. First, it's Jeff Barrett.
I thought that was 3 hours. I'm just going to have to hurry.
Oh, please no, Jeff.
Thanks for letting us be here. We appreciate Mr. Frost. I think he's addressed some of the concerns that we've had as residents. There were really just 4 items that we struggled with a little bit. First and foremost was notification. A lot of us, I live right on 75 South. I didn't receive any notification, and only a few people did, and that obviously is a concern when you're not being notified. And I don't know whether that burden is on the developer or what, but if it is, I think it's a conflict of interest in some ways that, anyway. The other ones are basically the rezoning, the density issue. We felt like there was only a very small piece of that property that was contiguous to 200 North. And but we also have felt, and I think I'm speaking for many, that we're not opposed to development. We all want to be here. We love Kaysville. We love West Kaysville. We just want to do it right, just like I think you do. But the rezoning was one. Safety, obviously, the traffic concerns. I don't know if I caught it from But we'd also like that pinch point down on the Angel and 75 end of 75 or 75 South and Angel, where we have that median down there as well, because we're concerned that the traffic coming from Angel Park, and if you've ever been part of that, it's a mess, and they're just going to bust right through there to skip the light. And so if we put those pinch points at both sides, we feel like it would be good. And then the last one was the water drainage issue, which he's obviously addressed and so on. So appreciate that, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you. Jason Sampson, please.
Oh, you're Senate. I don't get his minute. That's a low blow. So my goal in this isn't to get in the way of the landowner selling their land, the developer building on said land. It's hopefully to give context to one of the things that he talked about from the neighborhood, and in alignment with whatever approvals need to happen in this, that they can be adjusted or stipulations made that make it so that the existing neighborhood and the new neighborhood are in better continuity than they are with the current zoning proposition. Specifically, west side of I-15, there's not supposed to be more than 2 houses per acre unless it's on a major road. And when they brought this up, they actually talked about along with where that existing house is. I agree. The existing house is absolutely along 200 North. There will be no house along 200 North in the future. These new homes will be along 1700 West in the expansion and a yet-to-be-built street. So I think along is a little bit misused in this place, as it has been leveraged to get out of that 2 per acre, 2 houses per acre kind of limitation west of I-15. Additionally, I don't think that we can say that an R18 on the west side, especially commingled with R120s and RAs, is normal for Kaysville. In fact, it doesn't exist anywhere in Kaysville. There's only one R18 today, according to the interactive zoning map, on the northwest side, and it's next to GC and R1LD, which are 12,000 square foot. On the east side, I found 2 instances where RA and R18 do align with one another. However, they're separated by major roads. They do not share side streets. They do not share neighborhoods. It's clearly a unique choice to take R120 land, RA land, and put an R18 section directly inside of that where it doesn't exist elsewhere. There's got to be a reason that we did that. I think actually it's one of the things I want to talk about is that it is in conflict with that planned residential unit development 1734-1, which is new construction in already developed areas should to the greatest extent possible maintain the established mass scale height, width, and form of surrounding buildings. Some of these lots will be half the size, some will be a third of the size. The houses will certainly be half the size. And my last point that I wanted to make is that if approved as an R18, it kind of is the stamp of approval that's going to allow this and enable this to expand in areas that would otherwise qualify to be an R18. Undeveloped land that would not be able to be classified as R18 today, adjacent to these kinds of decisions where along is interpreted this way, would expand that neighborhood delineation outside of just this little piece. And that could greatly impact our neighborhood more than this as defined.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Susan Knapp.
Hi, thank you. My name is Susan Knapp. I live at 69 South, 1700 West. And I am a safety engineer by profession. I wish to address the safety-related through traffic issues that would be this 200 North, actually read a little list. Connecting 200 North with the existing 1700 West would significantly encourage through traffic by non-residents in an effort to bypass the light at 200 North and Angel Street. The new intersection, which would be created on 200 North and 75 South outlet to Angel Street, are both ill-equipped to handle the increase in through traffic, which will inevitably be created if the roadway connects. Additionally, the increased traffic volumes will create safety issues for residents as well as motorists and active travelers. The current entrance design at 75 South will not inhibit through traffic, particularly for those who choose to use that route to travel from Angel Street Park to the area around Smith's. In support of the Kaysville City Master Plan relating to housing, paragraph C, housing development should have a minimum of through vehicular traffic and a maximum of open space. Any design that connects 1700 West to 200 North should incorporate design enhancements to help meet these criteria. We offer, the residents of our communities, offer these following suggestions. Add entry columns to the entrance at 200 North and planar medians at the entrance to 1700 West and at 200 North and at 75 South at Angel Street to advertise the residential character of the area. Incorporate a crash gate, that was discussed at the planning meeting, where any new community meets the existing housing on 1700 West to restrict access to from either direction while providing access to emergency response vehicles. As an alternate measure to the crash gate, incorporate speed tables, which were discussed earlier by Mr. Frost, where any new community meets the existing housing on 1700 West, and another speed table on 75 South between 1700 West and Angel Street. Incorporate signage such as no through traffic permitted, residential access only, or similar. Add necessary stop signs at intersecting streets. Possibly change the street design of the proposed development to remove any current pure straight shot from that 90-degree turn. Require additional curb, gutter, and sidewalk within the new development to aid in minimizing on-street pedestrian traffic and ensure appropriate safety measures where the new intersection intersects the bike lane on 200 North. And ensure that all such suggestions are incorporated in a development agreement before the development receives final approval. Thank you.
Thank you.
Almost to my dot.
Well
Well
done.
done.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Now, I have Brad Frost, Peter Mattson on this list. Do you want to speak again? No, I'm good. Okay, all right. Michael Halls, please.
Yeah, Michael Halls, I live on 75 South. We've talked about a lot of traffic calming features. They help. They don't really solve the problem. Typically people who are basically doing cut-throughs are going to do through about 10 to 15 miles an hour faster. Doesn't sound like much, but it adds quite a bit if you get hit at 20 miles an hour versus 35 miles an hour. We can make it as residential as we want, but with apps like Waze, people don't care. They're just going to follow what the coordinates are telling them. And while speed tables are great, typically in places where they've done it, they've had to install them every 88 feet, which definitely changes the character of the neighborhood. I'm not really excited about it. One thing is that I think the original request was to leave that 1700 West as a cul-de-sac. And then there was also some concerns about developing the Burton property that was right behind it. One of the ideas of the planning meeting was to create a U, so basically open up a stub road on the south side of the subdivision that would eventually develop when the Burton property developed, and then would connect back to 1750 West. This would create effectively, instead of a straight shot, you would come in, you would have to go like this, and then you would have to go back through to 1750 West, reversing course, back to 75 South, and then you would exit. That would deter a lot of the kind of through traffic that we're expecting. It would take out approximately 2 houses on that side. One of those houses could be moved to the end of the 1700 West, which would basically turn that into a cul-de-sac. But there's also Lot C in the plan, which is the one that they were talking about modifying slightly. That was being left open as a possible connection to a future road that would go to Angel. One of the challenges is this cul-de-sac is extremely long, and given the density, you have a lot of people sitting at effectively a dead end for a long time. We're not sure that that's ever going to really happen. You can't really tell the future. So what we're proposing, or at least I'm proposing, is that we take Lot C and we turn it into basically a single-family residential. That would again compensate for one of the loss of the homes on that side. So effectively, you would be losing, 2 homes, but you would be neutral. Would you gaining one at the end of 1700 West and one in that Lot C, which would be actually a larger home that would be developed. One thing to kind of preserve the character, homes 12 and 13, we think which should be joined into a lot that would basically be the mirror of Lot C. Density obviously is a little bit high, based on the developer's arguments. The low impact of seniors does somewhat compensate it, but to take that argument to the extreme, we should turn it into a cemetery. Yeah.
All right. Okay, sorry, no clapping. No clapping allowed. Sorry about that.
Seniors are very dense in cemeteries.
And-
It's very popular. They're dying to get in.
Okay, 3 minutes. Thanks so much. Okay, and then we have Brooke Hoffman.
Mayor, I can appreciate your request and plea for fairness. My home sits at on 75 South, where 1700 West comes to a T. And therefore, my driveway actually backs up right there. And my request at this point would be that you table this rezoning. We were never notified. And as of tonight, well, 2 nights ago, we heard what was going on and that the street would come through. That was all new to us. That was from some neighbors. I understand in the past, the idea of notifying residents who will be impacted within 500, 600 feet has been the law, and it has been told to you how ridiculous that is. There were a number of people who were notified about this rezoning. Those homes, the majority of them, sit north of 200 North, where the traffic would never impact those homes and those residents. It does impact my home. I don't feel that there was proper notification to those who would be impacted by this. There have been studies done across the nation in regards to safety and issues regarding traffic that is caused by a thoroughfare. Increase traffic, noise, safety, accidents, crime, you name it. So it is of utmost concern for my home, my family, as well as other residents on our street, and I would therefore ask that you table this until everyone who is impacted by this decision is properly notified. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. The next name I can't quite read. It starts with a K, and last name starts with an M.
That'd be me, can't hurt you.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, I'm getting old, so I hope you bear with me. My concerns on this were the fact that we didn't get any notices on it. I come up and talked to the planner, and I think I was talking to his secretary when he walked in. I asked her, and I don't think she really knew how many there were. It was over 100, the number I got, and I think the planner straightened that out at 46. And the biggest majority of the notices that went out, there were 7. There were 3 on 75 South. The 3 homes coming down south on from where 1700 West is. And those were the only 3 homes notified on, supposedly, on 75 South. Of course, the 4 homes in the subdivision were notified. Across the majority of the notifications went to the homes on the north side of the street in the other subdivision, which it really doesn't affect. One of my other concerns were that we had no meetings, neighborhood meetings on this. As far as I know, I think Dan mentioned in one of our meetings in the last few days that they did talk to him, but as far as I know, no developer has ever contacted me as far as talking about this rezone. The R18, I think it sets a precedence with the Anderson property and the Harvey property, and I don't know what effect that would have on the Webster property, because they've got half-acre lots on the Webster property that would abut Harvey's property. And he has frontage on Second North, and so that would qualify him for this R18 exception, which I don't agree with, because I think you have a master plan lots for that whole area. And I think in our subdivision, we have almost 10 acres of ground. We put in 4 lots. It took me a year and a half to get it through Kaysville City. I'm sure none of you people were here then. This was 17, 18 years ago. Your engineer was Andy. I can't remember his last name. It's been so long. But I fought with Andy. We were originally going to put a small cul-de-sac at the end. So the interpretation of the master plan is off. The water irrigation. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you so much. Dan Burton, please.
Sparing me being redundant, I'm going to pass. I think everything I was going to say has already been talked about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shauna Burbidge, please.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to come and speak with you. I want to thank all of my neighbors. Everyone who lives along 1700 South or 1700 West or 75 South, please raise your hand. I mean, as you can see, we have all kind of come together to not be obstructive, but to really come to a solution that we thought was something we could live with and work with the city to come to a resolution that works on both sides. There are a number of our neighbors that were not able to be here tonight, whether it's conflicts, vacations, other things that were already planned, or the fact that most of us didn't even know this was happening until a few days ago. And so we've typed up a letter that has summarized all of the comments that you've received from the neighborhood tonight that has been signed by an additional 28 residents that live along this corridor. So anything that you've heard in the public comment, we've also typed that up so that you can reference it and take a look at it and have those endorsed by the entire neighborhood. We really wanted to come with a united front to let you know that we don't oppose development, but we just want it to be done correctly. I have 20 years experience in traffic and safety and urban planning, transportation analysis, and my major concern with this area is not even necessarily the road going through, but just maintaining that residential character. I have 3 small children that play in our yard on 75 South every single day, and through traffic is a scary thing, especially as Mr. Halls mentioned. Through traffic typically travels 10 to 15 miles an hour faster than people who live in the residential neighborhood they're traversing. And so that's a major concern for us, those of us with small kids, those of us with animals. If you have a dog that's out in the front yard, that through traffic, people don't necessarily pay the consideration that they would if they live in the neighborhood. And so, as we mentioned, there's some traffic calming issues we'd like to have considered. Those are all outlined in this document, and I just want to leave that with the city and thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Shauna. Okay, that's the end of our list. Now, before we go to council questions, it feels like there may have been a snafu somehow. I'd like to ask council if we should table this for a period of times to give residents a chance to talk to the developer a little bit more. I would entertain a motion to that effect at this time, if it's. First, Councilmember Barber. Yep.
I would be in full support of that. I'm glad that you brought that up, but I think we could still have a productive meeting and talk about some of these things and have some interaction with the idea that we're tabling it. So we maybe make some headway.
Give some direction
Yes,
of what we would like to see happen in the interim.
Exactly. So I'm okay with tabling it as long as we can still have a discussion and give some clear direction.
Okay. All right. So let's go to council questions at this time.
So,
Council member, what's his face? DeCare.
oh, man. See, look, there's no respect here,
There's
man.
no respect.
None. You serve your city for 12 years and there's no respect.
This is the thanks you get.
None. I forgot the heck what I was going to say. I know, yeah. No, well, so before we move forward on tabling and that and stuff, I know there has been a lot of concern with notification or lack thereof from the residents in this particular neighborhood and that. And maybe if we could just get Lyle Gibson, our community director or community development director, the chance to speak on that, just for clarification or anything before we make any kind of a motion or anything like that.
Sure.
So Lyle, if you could speak to that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll speak to what was done. So once we received the application, we utilize our mapping system, which contains the addresses and data for all the parcels within the city. And we're able to take the properties that are under consideration, take a 500-foot radius from the perimeter of those properties, so not from the center. We include both of those. And per our ordinance, we mail out to Kaysville City property owners within 500 feet on a rezone request. And speaking with Mr. Mitchell, we reviewed that list, and I'm going to get the number close, 46, 47, I think properties fell within that distance. We mailed them off. I've heard from multiple people that some got it, some didn't. I can't speak to why they weren't received, but we do believe as our office that we sent them out in accordance with that. We also, and I've heard that it's not extremely helpful being at a dead end, but post a sign both on 200 North and at the 1700 West, the stub onto the street, just to inform passerbys that may not be within that radius, who may also be interested. So.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, Councilmember Garn.
Thank you. So would that 500 feet radius include all of 75 South?
No, I don't believe so. And it goes, and maybe this is Google Earth, so it's not as accurate, but we could give you an idea roughly how long 500 feet is. We generally have within a 500-foot radius in a more developed area, 100 to 120 people that we're sending out notices to. This particular section of town has several large property owners. When you go across 200 North, much of that's still under the control of Destination Homes, so one owner, even though there are lots of lots. So the list wasn't near as robust as we often see.
Could you keep your comments to yourself there in the audience, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
This line, this yellow line on the map it's telling me 513 feet on Google, if you can see where that started from. So it gives you a rough estimate of how far that distance goes from outside the property. So we would have measured, just again from the perimeter, 500 feet in these directions. It's a lot more precise than this using our tools that we have, but that's where we find out who was generated on the list and who we sent the mailers to.
Okay, thank you,
Point of order.
Just
Point
a-
of order. Do we have the right to speak to the audience in such a manner?
Generally, we don't speak to the audience.
Okay,
So
my mistake.
let's not do that.
Perhaps an
Okay.
apologies in order?
I
Perhaps.
apologize.
All right, Councilmember Garn, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I just, as I'm looking at the traffic, and I don't know how, this is kind of an anecdotal question. I'm not sure who would even answer this, but first of all, well, let me ask, could I ask a developer a question?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So one of the, I guess, constructive things that I heard during the comment period, would it be a good idea to put these traffic calming devices like the divider, not just on the entrance from 200 North, but also from the other side, 75 South? Is that something you would be willing to consider as a stipulation or part of the order?
Yeah, I think we're willing to consider it. I think we just need to look at the, I was talking to Lyle about that today, infrastructure, what's there, what are we digging up? There's a lot of things involved in that, and I think we just need to figure out what it entails, and what it really brings as far as lowering traffic. But are we willing to look at it, consider it? Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Thank you. And then just another question, maybe this for developer, maybe for Lyle, or both. And again, anecdotally, I don't know how to phrase this without painting it just a little bit, but so I actually have a daughter who, and son who play a lot of soccer at Angel Park in the spring, and I know how busy the exit can be sometimes when everybody's leaving the park at the same time. However, is it reasonable, and this is just to the level of traffic, because I think anytime you open that up, there's going to be more traffic. But wouldn't it just be more local traffic? Because I think a right turn, if I'm going up 200 North, I've got to make one right turn, which I can make on a red light. In order to get to 200 North through the neighborhood, I have to make 2 right turns and 1 left turn, and presumably slow down. So I don't know that would be, if I were going to cut through, that would be a cut through that I would want to do, I guess. And so I guess that's sort of an anecdotal question, but does that make sense that I got 1 right turn, or I got 2 right turns and 1 left, and about the same distance? Why I would do that in order to avoid a right turn at a light?
One of the things I think it's a great question, and one of the things that one of our employees was a planner at Layton City for 25 years, did this a lot in a lot of meetings and a lot of traffic, and we've talked about it. One of the things I think, by adding a few of these calming traffic scenarios, even the smallest adjustment is probably going to deter a lot of people. They might be first-time people that go through, but if it takes them more time to get through there versus just going to the to the light and turning right, or going to the light and turning left, we don't. Although we are concerned with the citizens that are there, we feel like it's going to be minimal, and these calming things would be very, very helpful in deterring people to come through.
Thanks. And maybe Lyle, from the city's perspective, and I would just add to the question too, so you've got to make a right. If you're going east on 200 North, you've got to make a right turn on 200 North. One way or another, you're either going to make it with a light, or you're going to make it without a light if you go through the neighborhood. And then you've got the additional left turn and the zigging and zagging. Have you looked at that? I mean, when you look at the traffic flows or anything and you're considering an application, do you look at that?
Yeah, so we recognize that there's probably the potential for additional through traffic, and there's certainly interest in that. It becomes a lot of speculation as to how much it may be. I would concur with the comments of Mr. Frost and his employees' experience that little adjustments can make a big difference in deterring people from desiring to do that. Probably the best example that I can give, because again, so much of it is speculation of what each case will actually look like until you put it on the ground. But I know here locally in Kaysville City, Barnes Drive was a large item of concern 3 or 4 years ago as far as how cut-through traffic would work on that street. But once the signal was completed at Flint Street, I believe that really became kind of a non-issue. It's very similar. It's a little bit more of a straight shot than this one is, where this one has the 90-degree potential, but it's a similar distance. You're near Flint Street and 200 North that people would have tried to cut, just to orient all of us. And so you look at the zoning map, but here's Flint Street and 200 North at the corner of the American First Credit Union, and this is Barnes Drive. And so that neighborhood really had a lot of concern with how much traffic would cut through Barnes Drive. They even petitioned the city council to close the street altogether. Some temporary measures were put into place actually to stop traffic for a while. If I recall correctly, a barricade was put up, and they did do that. Council actually took it back down, and I've never heard of any concerns or problems since. And I think since the intersections have been functioning, people choose to go to the intersection to get onto 200 North.
Because there is some advantage, right, to have a light too. You know, it stops the traffic. So even if you had to wait to turn right, you do get a light at some point to turn right, or you can turn right on the red, just like you could from a street without a signaling device.
And it becomes intuitive. I think if you're local and you know the area well, you may be more, and I agree with the apps nowadays, Google or others, that will just direct you. That's possible. A lot of locals who just are comfortable and know the areas will cut through. If you're not as familiar with the area and you're not using an app, it's just comfortable to go to the signal and turn right once. But, not every case is created exactly equal. So again, I would just say there's a little bit of speculation as to,
Sure.
the true impacts of it. But I just give that example as, while there was the potential for it there, it wasn't as scary as it was thought to be. This could be one of those, and it at least has that 90-degree angle, which would deter some of it. And again, small measures can go a long way if we want to do anything in addition to help improve that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Page.
Hey, while we have Lyle to mic, when were these notifications sent off? I know it's typically before the Planning Commission meeting.
Correct. So we send it off prior to the required public hearing, which is what the Planning Commission holds. They met on this item, I believe it was about 3 weeks ago, and so it's 10 days prior to that when we mail out the notices. So it would have been end of April, if I get my dates right, for that first Planning Commission meeting in, let's see, April, May, June, right? So end of April for the first meeting in May when the Planning Commission held their public hearing.
So say it's been almost a month, actually.
It's been quite a while.
Yeah. And actually, a question for the developer. That's okay. Did you have any meetings at all with with the neighbors around your development here?
Yeah, we've met with the neighbors. We haven't had a community meeting. Based on we met with some of them that were impacted and at the most, and we've, there's a lot of people here we haven't talked to, but everything that we've received from people we have talked to, they're not opposed to the project, they're just concerned with traffic. I haven't heard of anyone that we've talked to that really speaks negatively towards the project after we've spoken with them.
Excuse me, just to follow up with that, was it just individual meetings, or did you?
Individual meetings, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, phone calls, individual meetings. If we had heard of anyone that had an issue, or one house, I went to their house and sat down with husband and wife and talked about it, just so they didn't have any concerns. And so it's hard to hit everyone, but we felt like we've outreached the ones that are most impacted. But
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilmember Barber.
I have a lot to say, but first I wanted to say thank you to everyone who's come out. I do hope that you felt welcome. It's always appreciated when residents will come out here. So thank you for that. And as far as notifications go, we've talked a lot about it. I think from my perspective, it looks like we did follow our letter of the law. It looks like that, but there's also the spirit of it that most of the people who are directly impacted weren't notified. And so I will apologize for that, and I appreciate the mayor's notification or proposal there. And as far as traffic goes, I think we could stay here all night and speculate about routes and where people will go.
Point of order.
Oh.
Mayor,
Yes.
is this a question?
It's kind of not.
In the form of a question.
I'll put this in the form of a question.
Can you do that?
I don't. Anyway, thank you. My question is not about traffic. I don't really have any more questions about that. My question is, Mr. Frost, when you talked about the speed calming measures, are those something that we can put in the development agreement that you will agree to pay for as part of the development, or how does the city work with that?
What we're looking for today would be a rezone subject to any final approvals with that would be in accordance with the development agreement that's agreed to with the city, and with work and involvement with the neighbors as well. And so, yeah, those measures we'd be willing to pay for and make sure they're part of the development agreement.
Okay.
Lyle, is that? Can I ask Lyle?
Yes.
Lyle, is that something that, to me, it seems like it would have to work together? You know, it's a city road, city street. Is that something that we can put in as a requirement, or do we need to do some more investigation, it looks like, to make sure it's possible?
Yeah, I'll look to my right a little bit in case I'm out of line, but because it's a rezone agreement, and if you would be going through a development agreement, there's a large amount of discretion in that. Doesn't mean they have to agree to do those things, but willing to agree to it, we could require from them as a portion of that. And I'm getting a nod, so yes, we would be capable, assuming they're willing to agree to it, and they may choose not to, and we could choose not to give them the zone.
Okay. Can I ask one last question on that?
Yes, you may.
So how could we shape a rezone development agreement that would make sure that these things happened?
Often, so there are a couple ways we could do it. I think what the applicant would prefer would to, as stated just momentarily, approve the rezone subject to a development agreement being completed by the city and developer. And so what would happen is, in that scenario, you would approve a rezone this evening. As we go through the subdivision process, a development agreement is a component of that. So technically, the zone hasn't been overlaid on the property, but they've begun the subdivision process. Helps them complete some engineering, look into some of these items, and the agreement's formed at that time that would create language stating what they will, limitations on density, type of housing, traffic calming measures, who's paying for them, timeframes, and everything could be put in there that we desire. And again, if there's nothing that's agreed to through that process and a development agreement's never completed, the zoning which was subject to it never happens. So that's one method. Another that we see more commonly here with Kaysville is we'll do it prior to making a decision on the zone as an option. So they'll not have gone through the subdivision process. We may have less detail in there because less engineering and items have been completed. But it could be something that's asked of them as part of the rezone process rather than the prior scenario.
Thank you.
I'd like to jump in and ask a question. In the presentation from the...
Councilmember Barter finished?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In the presentation talking about the speed table, is that an approved traffic calming measure here in Kaysville?
Yeah, so I've not marked it against our traffic calming policy. This is
Right.
fresh today that I've seen the proposals. I think it is. We have chicanes, islands, speed bumps, speed tables. There's quite the list, and I believe that is one of them.
Okay. I just don't want to get people expecting that this is going to happen if we don't currently allow it in the city, then that would be a problem. So I think that needs to be sorted out as well. Make sure that everything that was suggested in the presentation is okay with our Public Works Department as well. Okay, Councilmember DeCare.
So I was here for the Planning Commission meeting. This was approved at. I sat in on it. I don't recall. Was there a development agreement affixed to the approval?
No, there was not. So the recommendation was done without a development agreement.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Any other questions at this time? Okay. Okay.
Mayor, I'll make a motion.
Please.
I'll make a motion that we table this item with the direction to have more coordination between the neighbors and the developer, and also more information from Public Works about traffic calming measures and feasibility.
Motion dies for lack of a second.
Hold up.
Okay.
I'll second the motion on the grounds that we still have time for discussion.
We will.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah. So it's been moved and seconded. Now we have comments.
About the motion.
And let it be clear, my seconding doesn't necessarily indicate an approval of the density. So it just indicates an approval of more time to go through the process.
Discuss. Okay, got it. All right, comments. Councilmember Garn.
So, sort of a question for the motion maker. Would you consider putting a timeline on?
Like the next
how
meeting?
long?
Yeah.
Next June 20th.
Our next city council meeting, to bring it, if that would work for staff.
It's going to be a heavy night.
2 weeks from today, basically.
But
I think that would.
Every night's a heavy.
every time's a heavy night. but
Yes.
would you add that in?
Yes, so I would.
To a date certain.
Amend my motion to say, to bring this item back in 2 weeks at our next council meeting.
Okay. Is that appropriate for the, acceptable to the second?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, and then I do have
Councilmember Gurn.
an additional comment. So I think I'd be persuaded to vote for this motion, mainly, even though it wasn't within the 500 feet. It's good, even if the, there may be some changes here too to how the traffic calming devices are configured, and maybe we don't want to make that call on the fly.
Yeah.
So it might be good to review that. I don't necessarily have anything against this philosophically, though, just so that, I'm not, as far as my vote 2 weeks from now, anyone's hoping that I would vote no, because I generally think that, R18 and even less density, I do think with the remaining small amount of land that there is in West Kaysville, that diversity along the major road actually has real benefits, and we should consider it. But it should also blend in with neighborhoods and not create ill effects for adverse consequences to the neighbors. And traffic and safety would certainly be one of those strong considerations. I don't really think R18, as far as impact on aesthetics or anything like that, or even the level of traffic, because of the type of community that would be there, would be that, at least from the development itself, cut-through traffic's a different issue, needs to be considered. But as far as the actual additional traffic, sounds like it could even possibly be less than maybe younger, more active population living there. So I think generally I don't see a problem with the development, but another 2 weeks to work through some of these issues and have a good plan, I don't think is a bad idea.
Okay. Councilmember DeCare.
As you know, I served on the Planning Commission for 6 years prior to this, and I understand that we did follow our procedure with notification in that. However, though, to that note, the residents and the neighborhood that is going to be most impacted by this does fall outside that encatchment area, and I think in a spirit of fairness, and I think a couple of weeks isn't too long of a wait for the developer. I mean, we have a good standing relationship with Ovation Homes, and I think that reaching out to the neighbors on 75 South would certainly be a good idea, and to discuss some things there, and so I would certainly be comfortable with voting to table this. So.
Okay. Any other comments at this time?
The
Councilmember
legislation
Adams.
about notification took place, shooting from the hip here, 1.5 to 2 years ago, somewhere in that mark.
Yeah, something like that.
Before then, there was just the yellow sign, right? And so there was a push to go further than that. And I'm glad that there's, I too add an apology that you folks, that's several of you, especially in a key priority area, were not notified. And the intent of that legislation was to curb off these kind of problems. I sponsored that legislation, and I pushed for further distance, but 500 was all I could get. I'm not saying that's a cop-out, but that's where we got. But I do believe that, I guess we could go back and read it word for word, but I do believe that it was also suggested that, or the next adjoining property or residences. Now, Lyle does a great job, and he knows our ordinances by heart, so I am not questioning Lyle at all. But I think in going forward in the future, that we've got to be making sure that we say, oh, well, they're 530 feet away. We go through an alfalfa field, and then at 530 feet, we hit a home where somebody might be concerned. I think there might be some need here to make amendments to that policy if it doesn't account for that. I have concerns about mixing irrigation and storm drain. Mr. Frost, that's been done before in the city. It was done down on Wellington Drive, and the city spent over $100,000 to go down and remedy that because it was flooding out homes. Because if you get irrigation compounding with a 100-year storm, and those events all happen at the same time, it causes mayhem. So we spent well over $100,000 going down and reversing that on Wellington Drive. And so I've got concerns about that. I also have, concerns about the density. I have to agree with what has been said a lot out here, that there is a propensity coming. There is a lot of pressure on the floodgate of zoning in West Kaysville. Property just east of this has been tabled, and I thought that it was granted the same 2 to 4 week return to our agenda, just as this is being given, but it's not. It's been months since we've heard back on some land just east of this, which is seeking higher density than Mr. Frost is seeking, but yet in turn still higher density than what the general plan allows. So I have concerns there too. I'm not necessarily anti-development, but we are really kind of stretching that, along major routes. We're really zooming that out and allowing more to come in. So I would hope that we could look at making sure that, as in this 2 week period, that irrigation and stormwater, commingling those together, that we definitely, treat that in a 100-year storm with max capacity coming off the irrigation. The property just below the west end of this, where that pond is going to be, could be directly and adversely affected by having all that channel hitting them, in one point. So those are some of the thoughts that I have.
Thank you. Any other comments at this time?
No, this time.
Okay. All right.
I have another comment.
Councilmember Barber.
I had to finish my comment.
Yes, you did.
Improperly said. But on traffic, all I was going to say is we could belabor all night the minutia of where people will go, but it's undeniable that traffic will change, that this will change the traffic patterns. And I really appreciate the developer and the residents trying to work together on that. So thank you. And then my other thought on the density, just some things to consider. When we have the R110 file, would it not qualify for the R110 on the density alone?
The density alone, I believe, would meet it. Essentially, an R110 is 4 units an acre, 40,000 plus square feet in an acre, divide that by 10,000. Where I believe the developer has stated is proposed the R18 is because it's a common open space subdivision.
In the side yard.
There's a funny equation we have in our ordinances. If you go under 10,000 square feet per lot, then you have to provide that somewhere else in your open space. And I believe they figured that they needed the R18 in order to accommodate that. So based on their lot sizes, you get a deviation between 8,000 and their lot sizes instead of 10,000 in their lot sizes, and it requires a little less open space, despite the ability to meet the actual density as you've asked.
And just a note on Ovation Homes, I feel like we had a recent development proposed that he spoke to east of 89, and I went and learned a lot about Ovation Homes at that time, specifically because I saw the lot sizes and was just really surprised. I'd never really seen something like that. So I went and toured them, went to the Layton development as well as the Bountiful one, and it changed my perspective because I just saw teeny lots on a plat, and then you went and looked and saw it actually looks like a nice home that someone that doesn't want a big yard, doesn't want a big house could live on. And so it does make sense that it's laid out differently. I think there's a lot of advantages to having homes that are smaller in size as far as the impact in the neighborhood. There's another neighborhood similar to us or closer that has 2-story homes that are really hard to look around, and these are a lot smaller. So just things to think about. That's all.
All right, and I just want to, off of Councilmember Barber's comments, I know that it's hard to imagine what these houses are going to look like, but I feel it is very important that we have a mixture of housing types in Kaysville, and we have an aging population. They are not going to be able to maintain the large houses that are expected in West Kaysville right now. As we move forward, we want to minimize the impact on residents who are already here, but we need to broaden our thinking a little bit as to what qualifies as acceptable in West Kaysville. I feel very strongly that there are very nice, well-done subdivisions that don't meet 2 houses per acre, and they allow our grown children to come back and live in Kaysville. Not everybody, you cannot have an affordable house on a half-acre lot. It is impossible. And there's only so much room in East Kaysville. So I want you to consider that we need a mixture in West Kaysville as well. And we will be discussing this. We're doing a strategic plan process right now. We are going to be looking at our general plan. I understand that people say this doesn't meet our general plan. Well, it might shortly. And so be involved. I want you to be involved and help us create what the rest of West Kaysville is going to look like. There's just pockets here and there left, but I want you to seriously consider broadening your perspective a little bit. All right, Councilmember DeCare.
Quick comment, if you don't mind,
No,
Joe. Do you
no,
mind?
actually,
Go ahead.
Just like in response to that, though, to not be guilty by association, that is the mayor's project. That is not something that all of us, an idea that we came up with. That's the mayor's project to redo the general plan.
All right.
Am I good?
Go ahead.
Okay. So just a couple of things with this. Personally, as far as the density is concerned, I'm not too concerned about the density with this. I mean, 3.8 units per acre, I think that's feasible. The other thing, I mean, what this product is, patio homes, it is something that we need. It is a product that's needed in Kaysville. We're looking at, these are the numbers that I had from the Planning Commission meeting when I was there. We're looking at 1,900 to 3,400 square feet. Is that ballpark? And then, but we're also looking at a price point of about 450,000 to upwards of $1 million. So, I mean, these are going to be exceptionally, we're not looking at cracker box houses here. You know, this isn't something, this is going to be a solid, well-planned, well-designed, well-built community that is going to end up, serving its purpose. So, so that's where I stand on this. So.
Thanks. Councilmember Garn.
Yeah, just a point of clarification. It's a little bit off topic, but since it was brought up already, just a different perspective. Of course, every member of the community maybe has a little different perspective depending on the issue, and certainly members of the council have different perspectives on things, and that's very healthy. But I'm grateful to you, Mayor, for bringing up a visioning project for the city that involves all the citizens who want to be involved in talking about the visioning. That's one place where, the everyday decisions that are made by the council, you're not going to have hundreds or thousands of people involved, but when it really comes for the vision of what we want our city to look like, it's important to involve everyone. Right. And I think that's what the, rewrite, even the last time when I was serving with Stroh on the Planning Commission, and the last time that we redid the document for the general plan, it took a long time. I mean, we worked on it for a year and had many different community input, and there was thought at that time to maybe change 3 units per acre on the west side, and that was eventually the city council. I think the Planning Commission did recommend that, and the city council voted that down at that point in time. And the only thing I would add to this diversity thing, certainly maybe affordable housing. I'm amazed because I live in West Kaysville on a half-acre lot, and our whole house cost less 21 years ago than it just cost to buy a same lot. I mean, way less, just to buy the lot for a half-acre lot. So there's affordability, but there's another aspect to sort of the diversity of age groups, and that is that, you know, you tend to have sort of a sameness like me, especially when we bought the house. I mean, we have 7 children, and I wanted a bigger yard so that they could practice soccer and, you know.
Point of order, is this germane?
Room.
It's a comment.
So, you know, I and still like where we live. We're right behind the Smiths. I'm not planning on moving from that lot, even though I'm older now. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that generally speaking, and you know, you'd have less people that are younger that can afford to move into a neighborhood when everything's, you know, expensive like that. And also you tend to not have as many older people. Some older people maybe still want to take care of their lot. I hope to still be mowing my lawn, but anyway, but other people want to scale down. And when you have sort of this age group that's sort of that same age group, then that affects the fiber of a neighborhood too. And I think they've done studies. It's just not me saying, but anecdotally, as a citizen of Kaysville and as a representative of Kaysville for a little while longer, I really enjoy in my neighborhood having different age groups. Ever since I was young, I love talking to the older people and I love the younger people. And so that it's not just affordability of housing, but it's the mix of people who you associate with. And when you insist on one type of housing uniformly throughout a large area, you lose that. And I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're ready to vote. Okay. Do we remember what we're voting on?
I can.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want me to restate it, just so we're all clear?
Just we're all clear.
So we are.
I took us on a tangent.
Sorry. It's okay.
Go ahead.
Everybody was on there. We are tabling the item, recommending it to be brought back 2 weeks from today to the next city council meeting, June 20th, with the direction of coordination between the developer, residents, and some definite plans that we can agree on for the development agreement for traffic calming measures. And I would put in there including signage, stop sign, speed tables, islands, things like that.
On June 20th.
On June 20th, if they so choose.
Being the second, my only addition to that is that the water issues are addressed. I'm not sure if it's even completely legal to combine them, so.
Okay. To check into that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We got 2
All
weeks.
right. I believe we're starting with Councilmember DeCare.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 5-0. Okay, we'll take a quick 5-minute break, please.
All right.
If he finds us on. That's traffic calming
Okay.
device on a suburb, quarter mile away.
Council, can you return to your seats, please? That's okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Now, returning to the fun, we're going to start on budget discussion.
Wow, riveting.
Councilmember Barber, can you shut those doors, please? Thank you. I don't care. All right.
Okay.
Okay, Dean, I'm turning it over to you.
Oh, okay.
I think you had some items on the budget discussion.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think we have a few items that we can go through that have been changes or items that have been discussed since the tentative budget was adopted. And I've got a list of about 11 items, and I think most of them are pretty straightforward. The first item here is we talked about a change in the per diem rate. That discussion actually took place at our budget retreat from the very beginning, more in line with state regulations, or not regulations, but state policies. Second item is animal control services. Since we met on the tentative budget, we entered into an agreement with Davis County for animal control services, and the agreement was more than we originally budgeted. So there is an increase there. The next two items are the 200 North Bridge repair and the City Hall renovation project. Those are kind of in a holding pattern, waiting for final cost estimates. We could certainly plug a number in there, but that's kind of been on hold until we had some more firm numbers. So there are a couple ways we can approach that. We can plug something in for the adoption on the our final adoption, or we can just wait and see how the numbers come in and then require an amendment next year, or amendment sometime during the year. The next item is park impact fees. I think there's still some discussion that can take place regarding the amount of park impact fees. We talked about whether to implement the study amount, the full amount, or something different. I'll just go through these and we can go back one at a time if you want. The next item, item 6, is pickleball lights. The discussion was to go ahead and include that in the budget with the understanding that we'll take a good look at parks impact fees that become available during the year and make the determination at that point. So probably wouldn't take place until after, if there's a pickleball season, after this pickleball season, sometime in the fall or early spring. Paramedic services, again, another issue where the amount came in more than anticipated, quite a bit more. And ambulance assessment, that's a new assessment imposed by the state. And then this is a number that we've been waiting on, the assessed values from the county. We just received these numbers early this week. And it changes the projection from this 3.285 down to 3,228,000. And then the additional money through the truth and taxation by holding our rate at the same level is a little more than than I anticipated. So I was probably wrong on new growth and probably wrong on increased assessed value too. So I was wrong in both cases.
Not by,
In a good way.
yeah.
And then the last item, there's still perhaps could be some discussion on personnel requests. I don't know if there's anything I've missed on that list or.
I don't see anything. Okay. Any questions that council wants to ask right now?
I'm good on these things here. I mean, I think, like I've said before, we run a pretty tight ship and that and stuff. I think the only issue that I would like to see with the personnel requests would be, and just to echo what I said during the last meeting, was for our emergency services for fire and for the police department. So those would be my two asks, if I could. Everything else that's on that list, it all falls within nominal means, and I don't see any issues with anything at all. So that's what I meant.
Okay. Any other questions?
Only
comments?
questions? Are we going to have
Comments?
a motion, or that comment's okay?
No, this is just informative.
Yeah, just
discussion.
This is work session, right?
Yeah, so, this is one of these tough things. That's what's tough about budgeting. On the one hand, extreme caution, because when you add, it's one thing, the thing that's so interesting about adding a car, especially buildings that are going to last 50 or 60, 70 years, is if you've got the money to do it one time, or you've got a dedicated service fee like on the bond, you're fairly well insulated from economic turns. But when you hire employees, if you stretch a little bit, then you run the risk of having to do layoffs and furloughs later when the economy turns down. And so you have to be really carefully think through that. On the other hand, 7 years, I think Chief said, that we've been waiting for police resources officers. The schools really need them, really want them. How important is that, especially in today's world where we have so many, unfortunate events, and we think, well, maybe that could never happen here in Kaysville, but it happens in other places where they thought it could never happen as well. And so, so those are both important concerns. But I think given, I kind of wish Dean had said, well, I was wrong on the, valuation side, and therefore we have more money coming in, but I was right on the growth side, because then we would have a little more revenue, I guess, where we could justify that. But I'm thinking where the estimates are very conservative, that it may be time after 7 years to move forward with hiring the resource officers in addition to the clerk, for the accounting clerk.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Barber.
So for the City Hall renovation project, are we just waiting for the final number of what our bond payment each year will be?
In that particular case, I think we're pretty close. I mean, that would be an easy one, in my view, to plug into the budget. It's just something that has just kind of been in a holding pattern, but really I think that one could be added prior to the adoption.
That's, I think, what I would recommend, because we're pretty close, we know, and that way we can show where it's coming from every year that we're committing to. That would make me feel better. And then also the down payment that we're putting on there, do we put that into this budget?
It would be included as well.
Okay, so I think that would be good to show as well, especially, I'm sure there's a way to show that it's coming from savings that we've had for the past couple of years in preparation for this project.
It would be a transfer from general fund balance to either the capital projects fund or the building authority fund, depending on how we line those up.
For the park impact fees, I thought when we talked before, we had a consensus about that. Do you want us to restate what we wanted now, or?
I think so. The action at your next meeting will be to adopt the consolidated fee schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to have that number in place at the time we adopt that fee schedule, which is 2 weeks from now.
So do you want a recommendation right now, or?
Yeah.
Because I just want to have it.
It would have to be now.
I want to have it
Yeah.
in there, signed and sealed by next week, because that way it'll help us going forward.
I mean,
And
with
so we
budget, you
restate that.
can change it at any time. I mean, it's a
True,
budget.
but-
But there is a process that naturally flows, yeah.
Okay. So I'm happy to do that, and yeah, I think that was my last question, except personnel.
Okay, so what kind of motion are we looking for here? To
Specifically, just the park impact fees, right?
the park impact fees?
Yeah, I think of all the items on the list here where there's a change that really is out of our control, I think we just need consensus from the council to go ahead and include those in the budget. I think the ones that we probably ought to discuss park impact fees and have a recommendation on what that amount should be as part of the consolidated fee schedule.
Okay, all right. So, as I recall, that I believe a majority of the council was comfortable with the rate that was recommended.
Yes.
But maybe you could make a motion to that effect to direct staff to include impact fees, park impact fees at the rate as
Recommended,
presented.
yeah. Okay.
Okay, try that.
So I'll make a motion that we recommend to staff to implement park impact fees at the full recommended amount from our impact fee analysis study.
Second.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Let's go with comments.
We're okay to vote on work items?
This is giving direction to staff. So, and it'll come back for an official vote later, right? So it's just giving direction to staff. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So we're going to go to a vote. Councilmember Adams.
Nay.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 4-1. All right. Thank you.
So that one's good.
Okay. Okay. Anything else, Dean, that you need specific direction?
After him.
I guess the only other item, I think I will go ahead and put in numbers for the City Hall project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In final budget, I'll do the same for the bridge repair.
Thank you.
I think we're pretty close there. The other numbers I will adjust based on what we show here. I guess the last item perhaps could be personnel requests. I think the last communication from our city manager was to fund one position and then wait and see on school resource officers at the midpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine, honestly, to do that as a whole for all personnel requests.
Okay.
Just at our retreat, we'll sit down and see where revenues are and evaluate the requests mid-year. Like Councilmember Garn suggested, I'm not concerned with year one costs. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. You can put money in there with a little squeeze, you can make it work. It's building the base. And after 1 year, then you've got cost of living, you've got step increases, and it's not like just a infusion of cash for one item. It increases the base. So I think that's, from my perspective, that's the thing to take into consideration.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So do we want to make a motion on?
I feel like we should.
Okay.
I feel like it should be pretty.
Councilmember Garn, can you take that on?
Yeah, so I'll make a motion that for all personnel suggestions, considerations, we wait until the midpoint, reevaluate the revenue projections at that point, and move on then.
Point of clarification, except for that one.
That was my question.
Yeah,
It's
that
already-
one.
No, I would do it with
I
all
think
of
that's what
Okay,
he's saying.
okay,
is
got it.
We wait for everything.
Got it.
Except for the clerk.
The finance clerk.
Right.
No, I think
No, he
he's
said-
meaning
suggesting-
everything.
I'm suggesting
So the
all
clerk's on
positions,
hold too.
including my
Okay.
request.
Okay. Is
think
that going
that's
to
a good
interfere
idea.
with our next evaluation?
Our audit?
Audit, yes.
I don't think so. I think we've done some things to shift some things. We've taken away, has to do with segregation of duties, and we've taken some duties away and shifted to IT and also shifted some to Maria as well. So I think I still feel like there's a need, but I think we've shifted some things that the auditor would be satisfied.
Okay.
If he
Well done.
recommends it, I think that's
Okay.
great.
All right.
To clarify,
why are we backing away from the clerk now? Where are those funds going to shift to?
They're not shipped, they're not included.
Well, we didn't have, and wasn't it anticipated that the clerk isn't the clerk in this budget?
No.
Okay.
I think one way to look at, I'm sorry, Mary,
You know what, first, before we do anything more, we need a second on that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, now you may speak. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is the way I look at this. It's likely, you know, since it's a very conservative assessment, that it would go forward. But I think Dean was suggesting, which I incorporated that into my motion, that that why not put them all there, and then if we're right, that the revenue is better than a very conservative suggestion, we can move forward. But we're not committing to something now. We'll have better knowledge then.
More data.
And it's likely that we will be able to do it. But so it's not taking it off the table like we're not going to do it. It's just hedging our bets a little bit. At least that's the way I look at it.
Okay. Councilmember Barber. Yeah.
I feel like, and Dean, actually you two are both the accounting people, but I feel like it's just semantics. If we're giving the motion of we want to reevaluate this in January, I don't know that it matters if it's actually in the budget or not. I don't know how that works. Like, are you suggesting we don't put it into, we do put it into the budget right now?
Well, is it okay if I
Please
answer that question?
Thank you.
So I think the difference is that if you put it in the budget and then you pass the budget, you're committed, right? But
Yeah.
if you say, well, we see the need, we'd like to have it there, you get to the midpoint, and because any financial projection, any economic projection always has a range of possibilities, right? Anytime you're doing that and you say this, you know, and then there's the tail, you know, the bell curve. There's maybe historically a 2% chance that this is going to happen, and 2% chance that the wildly optimistic thing is going to happen. And here's the mean. And you know it's never going to hit the mean, right? But you know it's probably also never going to hit the tails. Right. So I'm suggesting if it's anywhere other than this most extreme place, you probably at least are hiring the clerk, right?
Yeah.
You know, but yeah.
Now I get it.
Yeah, I guess the only difficulty I have is what revenue number would I use? Well, not number to use, but what classification? Is it sales tax that's going to be better? Probably that's really the only thing that's going to drive it. I guess you could artificially, maybe not artificially, you know, increase sales tax revenue from what my projections are, but I think my preference would be to just reconsider as a whole mid-year.
All
I
right.
think I can understand Councilwoman Barber's point, though. It's a matter of, do we really need a motion and a vote on this? It's like, naturally, we're gonna organically review this, you know, come budget retreat.
I think it is important because it's this is a policy statement. So what we're saying is that we want to be able to do these things. That's what a budget is. It's that these are our policies in action, right? It's what you fund, that's what you value, and we are valuing having another clerk and resource officers. So I think it's important that we do it.
I think
All
so.
right. Yes.
I think so, especially because there's a lot, as you probably all know, there's a lot of attention and question about these officers and where we're going. So I think it's our way of saying it's high priority. We're going to assess it, but we're also going to be we want to be more informed to make the decision.
So have you changed your mind now and willing to second the motion and move this thing?
What was that?
Are you willing to second the motion now and move this thing down the road?
To the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Oh, did you?
To the beginning of the year. I mean, because that's what the motion is, right?
Yes.
We reevaluate.
Yes.
We're saying it's a priority that we will reevaluate at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
So be it.
Calendar year.
It's been moved by Councilmember Garn, seconded by Councilmember DeCare. Let's go to a vote. Councilmember Adams.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you. All right. Anything else, Dean? Okay, wonderful. Now we'll go to call to the public.
Wait, can we entertain some questions about the budget?
Yes.
No, and I wish I would have had these questions, you know, laid out before we just voted about the resource officers, because, you know, that's something I kind of battled for last time too. But number one, in our budget, we are going up, proposed, tentatively modified, we are up like $23,000. So, and the bulk of that comes from salaries, you know, and so, Dean, have you done any modifications? Do I not have like a revised on this? We agreed that the salaries are not going anywhere at this point.
I think the discussion is to leave the number there, have our consultant review mayor and council pay, which I do have a copy and available for each of you. And I think we're pretty much in line with what he would recommend. But I think the discussion also was that it would not be implemented with current council members. It would be implemented with new council members that are elected. Is that correct?
So who's
That's
the
my
consultant?
understanding.
Pardon me?
Who's the consultant there?
It's Personnel Systems and Services.
Okay, so per our discussion, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, there was going to be a citizen committee doing that, not a hired gun.
You know, that sounds familiar to me.
Yeah,
Familiar? It was
Yeah.
very
That was-
bluntly stated.
Yeah,
Excited.
so,
I was assuming,
yes, Councilmember
I was assuming
Barber.
the citizen committee would use this as data to
Mhm.
make their decision and recommendation. So I didn't think this would be the official. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cut to the chase, just look at the second page.
Okay.
We're recommending.
Oh, dear.
It's a good thing I got my lineless bifocals on.
Wow.
They're recommending the mayor be in a range between 16 and 20, and this is based on using population as the predictor, and the city council being in the range between 8 and 9. And so I think it's pretty close to where we recommended.
I can't remember what exactly we had before, but
I
it seemed
think
like
it was
about that.
18 for the mayor, 9,600 for the council.
Okay.
All right, so.
Another question
yes.
is, we haven't discussed the legal department. It looks like it's going up quite a bit. So we could
Okay.
maybe jump there in the book.
I didn't bring my book.
It's in admin, right, Dean?
Yeah, I think I have there'll be a clarification. This budget year, we shifted supervisory responsibilities among department heads. So obviously, Anne Marie, our city recorder, shifted from community development to administrative services, and Maria, our legal assistant, HR benefits specialist, shifted to be supervised by our city attorney. And so I think that's the reasoning why it appears to go up.
So we haven't added FTEs here.
No.
We're just shifting them
Just shifting
around.
responsibility areas.
One bucket to the other.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. All right. Okay, so I think a good point on the citizen committee. We'll probably need to have a discussion on how we want to do that. Sometime before August is when we would need to do that. And all right, let's go to public comment. Thank you. Richard Proctor. I've been looking forward to this.
I would be so disappointed.
I had to miss the last one because I've got so much pressure on this book. I'm doing presentations and sales and everything. And so I had to miss one. I won't be here all the time anymore. But I can. Guys, we talked about the Electoral College just briefly last time. And I mentioned in that we're not using it right already. And we haven't used it right for 200 years. We only had 2 elections that used the Electoral College properly. Washington's, none since, not one. What's happened is the political parties took over the job without asking. They just did it. So now the political parties are taking the place of the Electoral College, and they're deciding who we get to vote on, and those people always decide on their peer group. We're in trouble. The Electoral College is supposed to be two representatives, 2 electoral guys for the Senate, and in our state, 4 more for the House, so that's 6. What are they supposed to do? They're supposed to meet in the state on a particular day and select 2 people. So we would select then 8 people. Nomination, votes for, you want to call it what you want. We would select 8 people. That group, those tallies would go to Washington, be opened by the Senate with the House in place. And that's how we get our opportunity to vote for a president in a republic, rather than a popularity contest, which becomes a circus, which is not a democracy. And we are not a democracy. We've talked about that before today, yeah? Guys, there's just so much in this thing, and this book is selling. I mean, wow, yeah. It's only been out a month. Okay, we've had 4 printings. Guys, we need to think about these things. We need to be learning. We need to be a part of it. I volunteered to do some classes here in Kaysville, but nobody wanted to, so I moved on to other places. They did. How do you like that? Okay. I was on the David Knight show this week. Okay, and on his show, they're asking me to come back now every 2 weeks. I don't know if that'll happen, but that was the plan, to teach this book, to teach what's going on. And this is also causing sales of our other books, so that's good too. But this is the main thing. This is the culmination of it. I always carry copies with me. People always want to get it, so I give them to. I don't give anybody a book, you know. But I do provide them. I do provide them. You guys, it's been a real pleasure chatting with you guys, and I hope I'm here a lot more than just once in a while. But I'm really under the gun now. This is important.
Thank you.
I'd still be available to do any Constitution classes you guys want me to do. Honest and true, I won't miss. I want to do that. I want to teach the Constitution. It's working out. Take care.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I'll just open this up. Anybody have reports on their areas tonight?
No.
No. All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. And moving on to I would like to open our Architectural Review Committee meeting. Yes. All right, moving on. Okay, Lyle, Architectural Review.
I'll hopefully make this brief. I think it's fairly straightforward. However, willing to take any questions and add details as needed. We're seeing a lot of growth still within the business park, which I think is a positive thing. We've had a few 100,000 square feet of space come online in just over a year, and it's pretty much full. So just as an update for the council, you look at this map, these buildings right across the street from the one in yellow, Access Park, are going well. We've had some vacant space that's been online for a while that we're seeing businesses come into. And here before you is yet another building being proposed. So the address here, lot 117B, you can see the existing building here that was put up. It's been in place just over 2 years, I think, as far as when it completed construction. Ahead of what they anticipated, they're ready to build a second building. The architecture is nearly, it's very similar. They'd be placing it behind the existing building. So again, the street here on the left, the existing building, the new building on the right. It'll be larger than the existing building, 7,300 square feet floor area, 2 stories. Based on our reviews, it's got all the parking necessary, landscape necessary, setbacks and everything comply. Height is under what's allowed within the zoning district. Seems to be pretty much in line with what was originally shown to the Architectural Review Committee back in November of 2017, I believe, when this was originally approved. So it's staff's recommendation that the proposal be accepted. Should you as a committee feel that the architecture and site development is in harmony with the business park. I will add one other item. I don't have specific users that are going in there yet. However, based on the floor plan, it's all professional office space, so there's no warehouse type use in this, and that's the type of users that we'll expect. We have, I wish I knew all the businesses that were in there, but accounting firms, legal, a variety in the existing building, probably similar type uses in the back building.
All And you need from us, to do what?
Need a motion
motion?
to approve the development, should you feel
Any
appropriate to do so.
questions? Yeah, any questions on this?
I have one very quick question.
Okay, go.
Very quick. So go back to the map where it shows all of them. Are there, for the remainder of that, I know we have that car dealership, but that to the north, the rest of that land there, is that the idea to have two buildings together? Do we have any ordinances that say what type of layout that can be there?
So the building that's being proposed is here in the back, in between the car building and this white roof. And you'll see in many cases, this large development, for example, commercial development allows for multiple buildings and multiple structures on the same parcel.
Okay.
And so this would just be another example of that. It's all under one ownership. They lease out the units to different businesses and entities that come in. But it would be very much compliance and consistent with commercial development.
One parcel, and they're just adding multiple buildings with it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and you'll see that in commercial frequently. Residential, not so much, unless it's like a shed or a detached garage. We require each one be on its own lot. But commercial development does permit to go in that manner.
Like it's condoed out. Yeah. Like condos, yeah.
Okay. So that could happen with the remainder of that land?
Yeah, so,
Depending on how they want it.
and I spoke to the property owner to the north, and he's still actually working with the same architect that just put this together. I expect this year we'll see the plans. It's likely speaking within the spring. We'll see that under construction. It's a pretty large building that they're working on to the lot to the north. And then I know the property owners north of that are interested in selling off or leasing, finding users for that ground. So it's a matter of time before those things continue to see development.
Great, thank you.
Okay. I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve Lot 117B as presented.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Committee Member Adams and seconded by Committee Member DeCare.
What's his name?
What's his name?
What's his face?
All right,
That's
what's his face?
Something's
And
his face,
any other comments? Seeing none, Committee Member, you.
Yeah.
At least she doesn't discriminate.
Wait. I think we
Are you
totally
totally
solve
vindicated
that.
right now? You can go home and rest well now.
Doesn't know anybody.
I'm gonna go home and watch Canadian
Well,
football.
just you.
We know who has influence, right? It's not us.
Thank you, Councilmember Paper.
Yeah.
Aye.
Print.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
All right, very good. Thank you.
I think it's great to end on a little.
Oh.
I think it's fantastic.
All right.
Even if it
Have a
is
good